Today what we're going to do is we're going to make a seamless pattern, and a seamless pattern is where you have a pattern that is seamless. You don't see where the edges are, and so since it's Halloween time, we're going to create a Halloween themed pattern here. So we've got lots of different pieces here that you can use, some of these different drawings and stuff like that. Some of these might be grouped here, so it looks like some of these patterns are grouped. So what you want to do is just ungroup those here. And then you're going to create two different patterns today. I'm just going to show you how you can make one. And there's also a series of other patterns and stuff that you can use too as well. Some different kind of sports themed ones. Some cats here because cats are the best. And you can make your own pattern as well here. So I've got one pattern that I've made. I'm going to make more of like a simple pattern, but so you guys kind of see the steps here. But this is a pattern that I've made, and this is a seamless pattern. And let me show you what that looks like here. So if we create a shape here, so if I grab like my star shape, I can go up to Object and Fill and Stroke. And if I go inside here are my patterns. And I've already selected this. Oh, that's an earlier one here. So if I go here, then I can fill this in with my pattern here. Yeah, there's my pattern here. So the cool thing about this is when you make your pattern, you can fill it with any sort of shape here. So if I grab like my Bezier tool and make just like this kind of blob shape, it'll fill that with my pattern here. So like that. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I've got some ones that I've started here. I'm going to move this over here so I've got a little bit more space. And first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create a 400 by 400 pixel box here. So if I grab my my square tool, I can go inside here. Here's my width and my height. Right now this is set to inches. But if I go in and type in 400 px for pixels, I'm going to press my tab key and then type in 400 pixels here and press enter. Here is my 400 by 400 box here. That's this one here. This is going to make sense here in a little bit for why you want to do that, because we're going to use that to make our pattern here. So with a seamless pattern, anything that goes off the edge needs to go on the edge at the other part here. So I've got some pieces that are going off the edge on my left hand side that are going to need to go on the edge on my right hand side, and then same thing with my top. This skull and this pumpkin are going off the edge of my square here, and they need to go on my edge on top here. So what we're going to do is, so first thing you'll do is make your patterns. This is one that I just kind of started here. It's not a super complex pattern. I can add some more pieces to this. You guys spend a little bit more time on yours. But what I'm going to do now is I need to make these pieces go on to my other side here. So you're going to go up to Edit and Preferences. I'm on my Mac here, so it's a little bit different. So I'm going to go up to my preferences this way, but you'll go to Edit, Preferences. You'll get this box that opens up here. So here's the Preferences box. I want to go to Behavior here, and I'm going to click on this little arrow, and then I'm going to go down to Steps. And then here are the areas that I need to change here. I need to change my arrow keys and my scale keys here. So this is on pixels already, but you want to make sure this is on pixels. So mine's already on pixels. And then I'm going to type in 400. Oops. Okay. And then I'm also going to change my scales here to 400 as well. Okay. And I'm going to press tab. This will automatically change that. So what that's going to do is every time I use my arrow keys and I use my scale, it will do that by 400 pixels. If you want to get this back to your default, or just get it back to what it was before, you can always go in and change that like that. So I'm going to close this out. We're done with that. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go back to my pattern here, and what I can do now is I just press my right arrow key. I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to press Control D, and then I'm going to just move my arrow key, and that's going to move that right along the edge here. So instead of me trying to like move this and trying to get this into the right spot here, which would be impossible, I can just use my arrow keys and do that as well. So the same thing, I'm going to grab this piece of candy here. I'm going to press Control D to duplicate. Okay, and then I'm just going to press my arrow key over like that and do that. Same thing with this skull. I'm going to press Control D and then move this down like that. And then same thing with this pumpkin. Control D and then move this down like that here. When you're doing this, you'll notice that I don't have anything on the edges here. You can put stuff on the edges, but you got to be really careful how you set that up. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to make sure everything turns out perfectly here. And that'll make a little bit more sense. So I've got a few different kind of blank spots. So I'm going to grab some other pieces here. So I like this candle, and I like this tombstone. So I'm going to press Control D and duplicate those, and then just kind of bring these over here like that. Okay, so create an interesting pattern. You know, play around with how you are putting these pieces in, how you're kind of rotating them, how you're scaling them, how you're layering them. You want to create something that's like interesting to look at and just kind of like fun here. So I might actually kind of like this here, but it's a little bit too close to that candle. So I'm just going to bump this over, and then I'm just going to do the same thing here. I'm going to probably bump this hat over just a little bit. I'm going to press Control D on this tombstone, and then I'm just going to bump this over here like that. Okay. Again, I've got a few bare spots, and I'd want to kind of fill those in here, but I'm just going to go with this here. So now I've got my pattern. Now what I need to do is turn this into a pattern. So I've got my background color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of that, and so we're going to use this as our clipping mask. So remember, with a clipping mask, you can cut pieces out. We did that with our avatar project. So I'm going to press Control D and duplicate. Now this is going to cut everything out, and then I'm just going to select everything. So I'm going to drag and select everything, and then I'm just going to go up to Object, Clip, and Set Clip here. Okay, so that'll cut everything out. Everything should look good here. So that looks good. And now I'm going to make my pattern here. So I'm going to select all of this, and then I'm just going to go up to Object, Pattern, and then Objects to Pattern here. Okay. Now it doesn't seem like anything happened here, so I'm just going to make a shape. And then I'm just going to go up to Object, Fill, and Stroke. And then I'm going to click on my pattern here, which is right here. So I'm inside the fill. I'm going to click on my pattern. And then with Inkscape, it's going to make your pattern. It kind of just creates names for your patterns. So, oh, here's my pattern. Usually it puts it up at the very top here, but I guess it just put it right down there. So this is pattern 58899. And it just assigns just any sort of random name to this here. But that's my pattern here. Okay, so you're going to create two different patterns, and you're going to put these into your artboard. So I also want you to choose some sort of interesting shape, and that way you can kind of see how your pattern fills in. And there's one other thing that you can also do with your pattern. So I've got this. If I click on my nodes tool, you can also adjust your pattern here. So you might need to zoom kind of way out, but I can see my tools here. So there's a few different tools that you can use to create your pattern. If I click on this circle tool, I can rotate my pattern here, so it rotates my pattern along an axis. If I click on this square tool, I can stretch this. So if I hold my control key, I can make this bigger or smaller. If I let go of my control key, I can stretch this and kind of move this down. I wouldn't really recommend doing that here. And then with this square, I can adjust my shape here. And then with this X key, I can kind of adjust where my pattern sort of starts and stops here. So if you look at this, I'm just going to shrink this down here, and that way you can see kind of like my full pattern. So if you look at this, you can't see any sort of edge of where my pattern starts and stops. So if you remember, like my skull, my pumpkin were off the edges here, and then my candy corn and my tombstone are also off the edges here. But you can't tell where those go here. Okay, and that's the cool thing about this, is that you can create this seamless pattern, and it just looks like a seamless pattern that kind of goes on forever here. Okay, so you're going to create two patterns. You've got this one Halloween one. You can create a couple different Halloween ones if you'd like, or you can make your own, or you can use these really great cat ones as well here and kind of use those for your patterns as well. You could also combine these, so maybe like these black cats could be good, kind of like a Halloween themed one, and then some other ones too as well. Okay, so that's a seamless pattern, and that's our Halloween pattern too.